All right, hello everyone. Thanks so much for joining today's webinar. If this is your first time joining, welcome. And if you've joined us before, welcome back. My name's Alex Kelleher. I'm a marketing specialist here at IMEC, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. IMEC is a team of industry improvement specialists with the goal of igniting manufacturing excellence in Illinois in areas of leadership, strategy, growth, operations, workforce, and technology. Before we get started, just a few notes. We're recording today's session. Within a couple days, you will receive an email notifying you when the recording is available for on-demand viewing, along with additional resources on this topic, including the slide deck. We also invite and encourage you to use the chat window to submit questions as they arise during the presentation. We'll relay those questions on to our presenter, and at the end of the session, we'll then open it up to more questions. At the end of the presentation, you'll see a QR code for a brief survey about today's webinar. Your feedback helps us shape future content and ensure that we're delivering topics and resources that matter most to Illinois manufacturers. We also encourage you to follow IMEC on LinkedIn to stay up to date on upcoming events, resources, and insights relevant to your organization. With that, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Angelica. She's a project manager here at IMEC. Angelica brings a strong background in workforce development and HR, having previously served as an IMEC technical specialist, and now applies that expertise in her role as a project manager, helping manufacturers plan, coordinate, and successfully execute workforce-focused initiatives. Please join us in welcoming Angelica.
Thanks, Alex. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today to talk about and explore building up your internships, taking them to the next level, or starting a new internship program. Today, we'll be diving into how a well-defined internship program can benefit both you as the organization, as well as your interns. Internship programs can really do more than fill just those short-term staffing needs, but really help strengthen your talent pipelines and prepare the next generation of workers, both for your organization as well as the industry in general, because giving back is important as well, of course. Whether you're starting completely from scratch or seeking to improve an existing program, I'm really hoping to share something of value with you today. As Alex introduced me already, my name is Angelica. I have an image of me today because my camera is off. But as she had mentioned, I am a project manager. My experience lies in human resources, internships and apprenticeships, as well as industrial and organizational psychology as a whole, which is where my studies are. So I'm really excited today to dive into what some of those best practices are to really create both an impactful situation for your future leaders, so your interns, as well as those employees that are with you today, providing them with leadership opportunities they may not have had before, and just really making them feel good about working for an organization that really focuses on developing the next generation. To start today, we're going to just send out a very quick poll. It's a self-reflective question around why do internships matter to you? I won't follow up. I won't ask for names. It's just a moment of self-reflection to really understand why we're doing this. And as you add a answer to that poll, we'll see those results pop up. I'll give us a few moments to do that. As those poll results are coming in, I had marked talent shortages in manufacturing, as that typically tends to be the highest reasoning, but we have quite a diverse mix of reasoning for having internships, as well as outside of those top three, other. And so other can be really wanting to give back to the community, develop the next generation, as we had mentioned. But you'll notice that internships are really diverse in that they can address a versatility of needs. And so, again, kind of a self-reflective question to really understand what brings you here today, as well, or what brings you on the internship journey in general. Today, we'll be diving into some best practices around internship. First, identifying what an internship is, what benefits are created through an impactful internship, both for you as well as the intern. Organically, you'll notice that we'll include the benefits of for an intern throughout, but really speaking to how what appears to be a benefit for the intern can be a benefit for you as an organization as well. How to then attract that top talent, onboard it through best practices, as well as just general structural and tracking best practices. And so let's jump right into it. Defining first what an intern is. And I think the best way to define what an intern is to really outline what an internship is and what an internship is not. So, an internship is a structured, time-bound learning experience. It has to be structured because it is time-bound. Of course, through structure, you provide the benefit for yourself as well as the intern to get really impactful results. And you'll notice that the highlight of today is meaningful and impactful contributions. So through structure, you get those meaningful contributions, but also through structure, you're able to make the best use of time-bound learning experiences. Typical internships can be as short as 6 weeks for an impactful project or as long as 16 weeks or longer. However, the average is about 12 weeks for most internships. The modes of those internships look very different depending on where they're located. However, we do see in manufacturing, those on-site, in-person internships tend to be the most common. Um, Alongside that, you want to ensure, again, having meaningful project-based work. This will be a great win-win for both you as well as the intern, as we had mentioned something that creates value for your organization long term, but also something that is impactful for an intern to put on their resume. That's really also something we want to do when we're giving back to the next generation of employees and hopefully creating for yourself a pathway to future employment pipeline. So an internship ideally is also a talent strategy, both with that direct intern that you're working with, but also inevitably the ripple effect that hosting an internship will cause, both for your team internally that get to see how their leaders really contribute to developing the next generation, as well as the friends and family of the intern that they share, their classmates, and again, directly with the intern as well. It really creates a strong pipeline for you, a strong talent strategy, and that's what an internship is and should be. What it should not look like is a temporary or extra help to fill labor gaps. Maybe you have a large project for a client that really needs to get out and you just don't have enough hands to do some of those unwanted jobs, maybe some of those administrative or repetitive tasks. That's typically not considered an internship. Remember, impact is going to be that top component of a strong internship. And so temporary extra help is typically not considered a strong internship unless there are those meaningful um, outcomes that are expected. Lack of structure again is the opposite of structure, and so typically not an internship will have an unstructured or undefined role, and sometimes that's okay. If you're hiring a full-time employee and that looks a little bit unstructured at first, that's okay because your time is hopefully unlimited with them, and so you can have them shadow. You can have some of those organic interactions be more present than some of those maybe structured components. But with internships, with that time-bound component, being unstructured is not typically the best way to go, and typically not something that we define as an internship. It's also not intended to be a trial run with no investment in the intern, or again, replacing a full-time employee. Just really generally, if you're noticing it's only a one-sided benefit, it's typically not defining an internship or at least a strong internship. So if we know an internship is above all impactful, what does that really look like in practice? Well, internships are again intended to be a benefit to both you and the intern. So, structuring the internship for business needs will really bring out the impact for you as an organization. Because, of course, internships are impactful to the intern, but with the aging workforce, lack of new perspective, and decreasing talent pipelines, internships are also high impact for you. And as I had mentioned prior, at times, pieces that may be impactful for the intern can also be so important for you as an organization. For example, meaningful projects. Meaningful projects have meaningful impacts for the intern, but also for yourself. That's why setting aside duties and projects is so important. If the intern does something meaningful with your organization, your name will be everywhere. They might have a showcase of the internship at school where both classmates in their year, above them, below their year, are going to see your name, your organization, the opportunities you gave that intern. The instructors of those courses will see the internships and the impacts. The interns, friends, families, neighbors will also see your organization and the impactful, meaningful project, the cool project you were able to assign the intern. What a great marketing opportunity and general recruiting opportunity for your organization. Additionally, defining projects with goals. Define projects and objectives for the internship, not just tasks. This is both useful for you to structure team time as well as something for the intern to have structure around. So this really defines and outlines how much time your team really needs to be able to support an intern through those defined goals. And further, if you define a true support system for your intern, you'll want to ensure to have a present mentor and supervisor. Again, you want to bid for your team's time. Make sure this is something that makes sense for a specific department or team. Make sure that the intern can have access to those mentors and supervisors. By creating a strong support system will be opportunity for those who don't actually also typically get to hold leadership roles to train in that skill set, to train as a leader. Maybe someone you're thinking might be a good supervisor in the future. What a great opportunity to put them as one of those support systems in place for your intern to really see how they're able to function in a role like that. And who knows, you may have identified a future leader in within your organization on top of also hosting an intern. Outside of project goals, you want to also measure those measurable outcomes or successful internship outcomes. You want to make sure that when you sit back and you think about what that internship looked like, it was a success. You want to set expectations and timelines. It's, of course, a good exercise for the intern on workplace expectations, but also a great way for you to test the return on investment. What was that success factor of having an internship? And often we forget that when an internship ends, they may have done something for their organization and it just feels like it was great. It was fun. We did something good for the intern. We got something done as an organization. But what really is that return on investment of paid wages or use of your team's time? What creates that high impact internship and what makes it successful? By giving those measurable outcomes to defined goals or defined objectives, you will be able to see if that investment was worth it. And keeping in mind, standard doesn't always create distance, it creates results. And so at times, this may feel rigorous to have such a high impact internship with all these defined components, but it really helps create both result, but also just smooth operating in your organization. Before bringing on an intern, it's also really important to take a step back and define the business case. I said that just in the very beginning. In other words, what success actually looks like for your organization. It starts with potentially just a simple needs assessment where you ask yourself, where are you currently experiencing those bottlenecks as an organization? Are there projects that are getting delayed or projects that are consistently falling to the bottom of that priority list? And you're thinking to yourself, man, how helpful would it be to get those things done? But helpful right now is not on our priority list. Next, think about your top operational priorities this year. An intern should support those priorities, not just sit on the sidelines doing unrelated work that doesn't rock the boat. It's also important to identify areas that can realistically host an intern. Where do you have capacity to provide guidance or mentorship and that meaningful experience? Again, you want to provide that standard, and through that standardization and providing that standard, you do identify the capacity of each of your teams. And so, where in your business can you realistically have that intern? And one of my favorite questions, if this internship were wildly successful, what would be different in our organization in 12 weeks? Would a process be improved, a project be completed, maybe documentation created, or would our plant floor look completely different and the vibe just be completely changed? That really helps you define clear, measurable outcomes. And finally, it's important to be honest about intent. Are you looking to build a long-term talent pipeline, or are you trying to fill a short-term workforce gap? Neither is necessarily wrong as long as that meaningful and impactful work is there. But being clear and upfront with that, both within your organization as well as with the intern, will really shape and structure the experience for your team and define just how much time and intent is needed. When you take the time to answer these questions, you set both your team and your intern up for much more success and a meaningful experience because not only is your intern getting that experience, but your mentors, your supervisors, your team members are also seeing what that looks like within your organization, which heavily impacts organizational culture. Now that you may have defined the team that will work on it, the department or the projects that your intern will be working on, and really have identified that sweet spot where an intern may be of great help. The next step is attracting the right candidate, not just any candidate who might be interested, right? So there are a few key ways to do this effectively. First and foremost, partnering with schools, workforce programs in your local community can help you tap into motivated students who are actively seeking opportunities, not just passively. These are folks who are in programs, potentially programs that are requiring internships. Get to know those schools, get to know those programs, reach out. Those schools are looking for companies like yourself who want to host interns. What a great benefit it is for them to provide to the students that are paying tuition for them with a ready internship or even a ready full-time position out of school. And there is so many internships and so many majors that support this, right? So you have your HR folks, you and your workforce folks, maybe even tapping under that psychology umbrella. You have your IT folks, you have your accounting folks, you have direct manufacturing vocational tracks for some schools. It's a really great opportunity to create that bridge and get that benefit. Second, writing clear and compelling job descriptions. That's critical. This is often the first impression. So being specific after conducting that needs assessment, after sitting down, what are those meaningful projects your interns want to work on? Putting that on paper with job descriptions to really identify what the intern will do, what they'll learn, can really set you apart as interns are trying to find what am I going to spend my break on, right? My summer, my winter break on. What do I really want to do? I want to do a cool project. And so, as they're looking through all of those opportunities, you really want to set yourself apart with a detail as to what it is that they'll be contributing to. And that leads into highlighting those learning opportunities. Today's interns are really looking for growth and not just tasks that they'll do. So, again, the more you can showcase that skill building, the better. It's also important to actively promote your company, both externally and externally. So externally, you're building awareness and interest. Internally, you may uncover great candidates through employee networks or referrals, children, nieces, nephews, neighbors that are looking for internships. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. Promote on websites like Handshake that work very closely with schools and colleges. Go to those internship fairs or community events that may not even be directly related to internship programs. But the more you get out there, the more you network, the more you share that you are an organization that wants to contribute to the community's next workforce generation, the more interest you'll get and the more hands you'll get. And it will just organically grow into a great opportunity for you as an organization. As well as don't be afraid of those social media platforms. I know they can sometimes appear to be kind of the boogeyman, but at this time, interns are heavily associating with social media. They're heavily present on social media. And so if you're wanting to meet candidates where they are, that might be where they're at. They might also be on those campuses at those fairs. And just being visible in the right space will really make a difference when you're seeking the right candidates. When I speak to organizations that are mature in their internship processes, there are so many unique places that they find internships, both in their private life and the things that they're involved there, but as well as professionally. The more they get out there, the more they share best practices, the more they say yes to opportunities, the more the talent pipeline grows, both for internships as well as just full-time positions. You'll be surprised at all the wonderful things you're able to be in the know of when you network and when you say yes more often. When you bring all of these elements together, you're not just filling a role, you're attracting candidates who are generally and genuinely aligned with your organization and goals. So now let's talk about selecting the right intern. So you've been able to pull together a pool of really strong candidates, and now you have to choose the best talent. This is where you want to start challenging a really common assumption. Top internship talent is not always the candidate who is the most prepared for the interview, has the most experience, or has all the right answers. In fact, those can sometimes be misleading, especially for those early career candidates who may have had very different levels of exposure and opportunity. For some, it may be their third internship. For some, this may be the first time they're walking into an organization and interviewing for a real organization, real job. So instead, we want to shift the focus from evaluating potential from concrete experience. This does have to be done in a structured and consistent way, though. So how do we actually assess that? So when thinking of top competencies you want to have for your future interns, let's think through common things. Technical ability. Technical ability is where you can focus less on those perfect answers and more about how they think. Ask them to walk through their approach to a problem. Do they break it down logically? Do they ask clarifying questions? Maybe they can or can't explain their reasoning. What does that mean for you? If you're thinking of willingness to learn as a strong competency, look for curiosity and action. Are they asking thoughtful follow-up questions? When they get stuck, do they try a different approach and they continue trying and know when to ask for help or ask for hints? Or do they just break down under that pressure and say, no, I'm not interested in this any longer? For culture fit or honesty, focus on those behaviors, not necessarily personality, straightforward. Ask situational questions like how they handle feedback, teamwork, or challenges, both maybe in school or on teams, on projects, as well as professionally if that's applicable. Listen for those examples that show collaboration, accountability, and respect for others. That's what will suit your culture fit and honesty. And for communication skills, if that's something you're seeking for. Pay attention to how clearly they express their ideas, even if their answer isn't perfect, but they know how to articulate. Lastly, if you're looking for excitement or potential, being nervous may be just your indicator that an intern is really excited to work with you. One helpful way to stay consistent and objective is utilizing process. Since a lot of these aren't black and white qualities, using a simple interview rubric may be just what you need to evaluate each of these areas in a structured and fair way. So let's take a look at what that looks like. This is a very, very simple example of what an intern interview rubric can look like. Instead of relying on gut feeling alone for especially a lot of these competencies or criterias like willingness to learn or communication skills, they can mean different things for different people, and they're not so set in stone like software knowledge or mathematical ability. It's a lot more gray area. So this gives you a little bit of more of that structured way to evaluate candidates across those key areas. So you'll notice each category is scored on a scale. And each of those indicators, in this case, 1, 3, and 5, and you have options in between, each of those have specifications of what a 1 looks like, what a 3 looks like, what a 5 looks like. It really helps to compare candidates more fairly and reduce that bias in decision making. It also helps align your team so everyone interviewing is looking for the same things because, again, there's a lot of gray area, especially in these kind of competencies. And most importantly, it keeps that focus on potential and growth rather than expecting candidates to already have everything figured out. That tends to be our typical fallback, as on a daily basis, we likely hire a lot more full-time employees that we are expecting them to have things figured out. We're expecting them to have the right answers. We're expecting them to have that experience. And this is a different kind of situation. This type of situation may also be helpful to provide interviewer feedback and interview feedback, where you might not typically do that with a full-time hire. This looks completely different. It's completely more so in that gray area. And so this will create a lot of structure and help there. The goal is development and not perfection. And so staying in that mindset, but keeping standard will be really helpful. Once you've secured your ideal intern, that's when the real work begins. You want them to have a strong and impactful time at your organization. To do this, you can incorporate a few best practices. There is a host of best practices around onboarding. Onboarding is such a large part of both full-time hires as well as intern experience. It starts before they get to your organization on day one, and it ends after they have left that phase of their onboarding experience. And so it really takes a long time, and there's so many best practices. However, but to start with a few, a clear schedule. A clear schedule is going to be so, so important for your intern who may have not had prior work experience. Outlook calendars synced with mentors and supervisors and those that they are supposed to meet with will be a great visual cue for both your team to create a smooth experience for the intern and set aside time because outside of their daily work, they're also now supporting an intern, but also for the intern. Again, not might be their first working experience. They're not knowledgeable as to what the day-to-day looks like. So they may end up sitting at their desk not knowing what to do. So creating a clear schedule along with things that they can focus on in that downtime is going to be so vital for onboarding for success. Introductions to the team are also so vital. This will create a all the puzzle pieces to create one big picture of your organization by meeting leadership, by meeting team members, other mentors, and just generally getting tours of the facility, understanding what departments there are. You'll really be able to utilize their skill set so much more when they understand where their objectives and their projects fall into the entire picture of an internship. And so that will have huge, huge impacts for you. Um, Additionally, setting early goals. We often get a little scared to give things to do for your new hires or your interns, especially in that first week or so, when inevitably there is a lot of chaos, there is a lot of learning, it is overwhelming. However, we see that new interns and employees who are able to make meaningful impacts to an organization early on, incorporate, onboard themselves, and just generally um, assimilate into the culture so much more quickly than those that are kind of held back, put in a bubble for a long amounts of time before they are released into the rest of the organization. And so those goals, especially for interns, don't have to be large. It can be meeting with three leadership team members and sitting in on one of their meetings. It can be to help design the process for a new software that you're implementing into the organization, or ask 5 questions to X department. Whatever small early goal for your intern will be so impactful to having a successful onboarding program for them. And lastly, frequent check-ins. I can't say it enough. frequent check-ins are going to be your best friend with these internships. Um, Interns don't know what they don't know, and they might feel a little bit nervous about asking the wrong questions. And there's a lot that they don't know because they're at the early parts of their career. And so by creating structured opportunities for them to ask questions, it will make such a huge difference for them feeling assimilated into your organization, for them to feel like they know what they're doing and just really have a strong onboarding process. One of the things I first mentioned here was a clear schedule. So let's see what just a again, very simple onboarding schedule could look like for your interns. You'll notice a couple of things here. One, touch base points, check-in points are scattered throughout, beginning of the day, end of the day throughout. And this is only a 4-day snapshot. You'll notice it starts with pre-onboarding, so before day one, and has just a few of those initial pieces to make sure are kept in mind. But even during pre-onboarding, you have touch points, you have check-ins, you have that opportunity during a really sensitive time for the intern to create connection. This is kind of pre-onboarding is kind of that time frame where you've offered the internship to them, but they haven't quite started yet. And so there's that nervousness that really sets in. And so having a strong onboarding schedule for pre-onboarding will be so impactful. You'll also notice as the days move on, there's less on that schedule, and that's completely okay. In this case, it's just a 4-day snapshot, but maybe around day 10 or 12, the rigorousness of the onboarding schedule starts to go away a little bit. The intern is starting to feel empowered to take action on their own. Maybe they're starting to fill their calendar and your team's calendar with things that they want to talk about. Maybe ask things about the project they're going to be working on, learning more. And so the intent is to first start really close, hand holding, lots of check-ins, and kind of slowly start to dissipate that. But again, having structured around that schedule will be so vital to really have an understanding of when that time to hold on is and when that time to let go, when to set strict amount of times for your team, and when to let the intern really understand the inner workings of organizations and setting aside time. Now, let's talk about setting aside time and your team supporting your intern. This is what really shapes the intern's experience day to day. First, when assigning a mentor and or supervisor, ideally two different people, but in very small organizations, might be the same person, it's important to be intentional. A strong mentor is someone who is approachable and responsive and willing to teach someone else. They should be that kind of person who can understand and explain their own thinking. So not those folks that have everything up in their head, but they don't quite know how to verbalize it. Those people that aren't afraid of check-ins regularly and make it easy for interns to ask questions. For supervisors, focus on someone who can support the intern's overall learning. They should set clear expectations, connect the intern's work to team goals, and provide context so that the intern understands why behind what they're doing. Next, building in regular check-ins. This includes both formal and informal touch points. Don't leave this to chance. Set reoccurring calendar blocks, as we had mentioned, so mentors and supervisors are consistently connecting with the intern, but also allow for that organic and informal touch point to happen. You also want to create those very strong feedback loops. You want to encourage those informal performance conversations. And I say informal for interns because that time frame is so short and they haven't done this prior. It's going to be more of an informal format. However, this will give the internship comfort around receiving and applying feedback and make it two-way. Interns should also be able to share feedback with their mentor, and mentors should stay aligned with supervisors on progress and development. So again, feedback loop, not just a one-way street. This will both build that feedback skill set for your mentors, for your supervisors, as well as this intern that's going to be potentially a future leader in your organization. Finally, encourage questions and exposure. Set aside dedicated time for Q&A sessions, not just within the team, but with other departments and leaders. And if you're an organization that has a very developed internship program where you have multiple, 4 or 5 interns, many mentors, have that be group sessions as well as individualized. This provides that psychological safety to your interns to be able to ask questions that, again, they don't know if are safe or not safe to ask. They've never done this before. So by getting exposed to multiple leaders, multiple mentors, other interns, that will be great. If you have an opportunity to connect interns with friendly companies where they can connect with other interns working on projects and other mentors, that will further expand the network and encourage questions, exposure, build confidence, and just really expand their understanding of your organization and the overall industry in general. And then just make them feel more connected. Next, tracking progress. In front of you, you see again a very simple tracking progress sheet. You have your competencies identified on the left-hand side. Some are those soft skills like team collaboration, initiative, or adaptability. Others are more hard skills like quality standards, tools or systems, industry fundamentals. You'll want to identify how they've progressed and what their learning stage looks like, what they're actually doing towards this on top of the project they might be working on, how they've identified to-do tasks for learning stages or learning steps for these competencies, and the status that they're at with it. From first time exposure to this certain competency or very new learner, all the way through actively involved in your organization and utilizing said skill, which of course is the goal. However, being realistic with the time frame of the internship, you'll want to make sure that you're aiming for a handful of those competencies to reach the status where they are fully ingrained in your organization, utilizing their expertise and maybe even helping others with best practices. So with your mentors and your supervisors and check-ins, utilizing tracking, utilizing progress to really show the competencies that your intern is gaining throughout will both be a benefit to your organization, your team, as well as the intern, and an impactful um, resume builder for them. As we mentioned in the beginnings, interns are not solutions for short-term staffing shortages, but they can be a part of a one-time impactful project or your future employee. The internship can be a great time to identify interns that will be high performers and suitable for your company culture. If you do have a great candidate in front of you, treat them like a true future hire and even a future team member, leader, excuse me. A good future leader should be provided growth opportunities today and challenged today, not when they're hired on as a leader. They also need to be mentored, supported. The intern may not be ready to be your next hire today, but maybe in 2 years when they finish their studies. Even so, be sure to keep connection and engagement post-internship. Offer mentorship, attend the internship showcase if that's something that's applicable. Invite them for future internship cycles or invite them to be a mentor for other interns, depending as applicable. Lastly, make sure you're able to showcase a clear career pathway through employment. Interns want to see how they can grow into a leader at your organization from internship. When speaking with current leaders, and talking about their future internships, they often reminisce on their internship experience with said organization. And that's so incredibly impactful for both future interns, that leader and their ingrainment and culture fit into the organization, as well as your team that is looking forward to that next promotion or that next pathway. It really shows that you are developing teams from intern to leader, but treating them as that future leader from day one. By creating clear career pathways like this, you really show your interns what standard and a clear path looks like, but that standard isn't necessarily scary. So, what do you do now? I've given you a lot of details today around internship improvements or just internship creation. It can seem kind of overwhelming, as I know I've been talking for a while, but it does not have to be. If this is your first internship, start small and then scale. See what works with one intern, not four, and then replicate what went well and replace what didn't go well, what works for your organization and what doesn't. Every organization is so unique, from industry to size to just the culture of the organization. It's not a one size fits all. All that I have mentioned are, of course, best practices. However, you know your team best. Again, not a one size fits all. However, universally focusing on structure is going to make a night and day difference for the longevity of your internship program. If you already have an internship program and are hoping to take it to the next level, do not reinvent the wheel of what you already have. Continue to build on existing resources that already work, but don't be afraid to cut out those things that just aren't efficient. Get more closely involved with the local college you're already working with. Add an additional training to the mentor program you already have. Add a welcome back to the strong day one onboarding intern schedule. Again, use existing things in place, existing resources, existing processes in place to continuously improve your internships. If you're just looking to dive into internships in general, take a look at your full-time employee hire-on process. Maybe that needs improving first. However, you can take some really strong nuggets from that and apply it to a strong internship program. They're not that different in the sense of making someone feel onboarded the right way, successfully included, welcomed. It all is the same, right? They're all humans. It's just a different area of expertise. If you are just starting out, we'll follow up with a previous webinar around defining internships and apprenticeships that you'll be able to check out. So you'll get an email from me related to those. Feel free to contact me to start a mini self-assessment to gauge if your organization is ready to take the next step with internships. If you're already working on internships, taking the step to take a needs assessment with a technical specialist is a really great way to see if your business area is the right one to host an intern. Internships are a long-term strategy, not a short-term fix, however, impactful. Invest in strong internship programs that will last. You want to have a strong pipeline of internships. Structure and support drive success. Don't be afraid of that rigid structure getting in the way of connection. Structure typically doesn't create that distance or that cold feeling, if you will, but it does help um, create connection. It creates opportunities and gaps for that connection to occur. And small improvements can truly lead to big impacts. An internship does not have to be complex. It does not have to be composed of a multitude of steps. It just has to mean something. It has to be impactful for you. It has to be impactful for your intern. Those are the biggest takeaways. Thank you all so much for spending time with me today to talk about internships. As Alex had mentioned, please do share your feedback of the webinar utilizing the QR code that is on the screen. I'll give it back to Alex now for any questions.
Thank you, Angelica, for sharing your expertise with us today, and thank you to everybody for attending and engaging throughout the session. So this time we'll open up the chat for more questions, but we'll start by asking Angelica a few that came in during the presentation. Um, so my company is very small and probably uh, will not be able to put all best practices in place. So what are the must-have processes to have a successful internship?
Absolutely. And it's really great that the self-reflection has occurred that every single best practice that we talked about today is just not implementable, right, for a team of five. And so if you can implement with your internships structure around the onboarding schedule, structure around check-ins, having a mentor, you'll be set for success. So really having the who, what, where, and why, right? Why being what are we hoping the outcome of these internships to be? From there, you can absolutely improve as it makes sense. But for a small organization, just answering those big questions will really get you to a good starting point.
How do you bridge the gap between organic engagement and standardization around internships?
Absolutely. So we touched on that quite a bit of the fact that standardization is important, but it doesn't break the organic connection. And so my suggestion is to just have those checkpoints or standardized kind of anchors to connection in place on your calendars, on that onboarding schedule. But also don't be afraid if you're in HR, walk the floor, talk to the interns, see how they're doing, talk to the supervisors of what is and isn't going well with the internships. So hold that improvement session at the end of internships to create a standardized approach to continuous improvement of internships, but also just have conversations with your team. What went well? What didn't go well? Did someone from the welding department see that the marketing intern was walking around and didn't know where they were going? That's valuable, unstructured or organic conversation and feedback that's so valuable to the standardization of your internships.
Great. That looks like that's all the questions that we have for now. But if any other questions come up, Angelica's contact information is on the screen. And I know she's always willing to help out where she can, right, Angelica?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Please do feel free to reach out and I will follow up with the attendees here just to share, as I had mentioned, some of those additional pieces that may be helpful for your internship journey.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um, Before we close out our time together, just a few reminders. Please use the QR code that's on the slide to provide feedback about today's webinar. And then within the next couple of days, you'll receive an email with today's recording slides and any additional resources. To see other upcoming events we're hosting related to internships and other topics, please be sure to visit the IMEC events page. And I encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn to stay up to date on all upcoming webinars and in-person events. So on behalf of IMEC, thank you for joining us today and have a great day.